So what we're doing here, we're going to bone and roll and season a loin of pork. So this pork is a nice free range pork. Just going to carefully remove the bones. So I've taken a rib end of loin. It just gives you a little bit more to play with to be able to season inside. And carefully laying it back, keeping the fingers nice and clear. And if you want to, it's very easy just to actually ask us to bone and roll the loin ourselves if you don't feel like doing it yourself. So I'll just measure where we roll the loin over onto the flap to get an idea of how much we need on the loin. And just remove a little bit. And again on the back too, if there's a lot of fat behind here, we can take a little bit out of that so it's easy to roll up. Most important thing to do is to score the loin up before you put the strings around it. Easiest way to score is to get either a Stanley knife or a nice sort of sharp knife and just running even sort of size along the back of the skin. I prefer just going nice and straight. You can put sort of diamond patterns and all these sort of fancy sort of cuts on it, but this makes it nice and easy. When you're putting your strings on, they'll go in between the marks where you've put the scoring on the pork. And if you put a diamond pattern and all those sort of things, it tends to sort of shatter the crackling. One of the important things to have is the skin to be nice and dry. If you've taken it out of the plastic bag and taken it from the butcher, just make sure you put it in the fridge uncovered, just as it is like this, so the air gets on it, dries it out nicely. If you're putting pork into an oven that's wet, it won't crackle up, so you want that crackle. What I'm doing now is just putting a little slit in through the eye of the loin. And because I'm going to put a stuffing inside, this helps to sort of stop it all coming out the ends. And the stuffing that I've made up is just a mixture of breadcrumbs and a few herbs. I've also caramelised some onions. And I did a little bit of rosemary with that. I put a little bit of red wine vinegar. I'm just giving it a little mix up. You don't want it bound so it's really, really tight in a stuffing. You want it so it's sort of, when you ball it up, it'll hold together like that and then it will just crumble apart. If it's too tight, it just doesn't sort of set that well. So the prunes I've soaked in some Calvados. You can also just use some brandy if you can't get a hold of that. And I'm just going to put a little line of them through the loin. You don't need to soak them too long. I just heated them up in the Calvados and then put them in the fridge just to set there. There's a really nice little bit of juice. May as well put that in with our seasoning, our stuffing. And we'll just put a little line of that through. And the stuffing also adds that little bit of moisture to the pork and stops it from drying out. I'll just whack a few little sage leaves in there as well. Pork and sage always goes well. And a little bit of salt, just as a season through it. And now we'll roll it up. Stringing up the pork, one of the hardest things we always find. I just find a simple hitch knot so that it rolls back on itself. Just get a little hitch over the top, making sure you've got plenty of length at the end so that when it comes back under you've got something to tie it off with. And then we're just going to put a hitch, a rolling hitch going across the top of the pork. And it doesn't have to be too tight because when you pull it all together, it'll just tighten itself on itself. What I've done before this is I've put the oven on as high as I can go, so it's sitting above 250. I find that if you get a really nice burst of heat at the start, it'll get that crackling going. You know, there's many different methods, but this one I've found and it doesn't seem to fail. So just tying it off. And it doesn't have to be too tight, and you can see how it's just tightened itself up. And then we'll just rub a little bit of salt into it. And when you're rubbing it in, you want to rub it right into those score marks. I find you don't need to add a lot of oil over the top of it. And that should be our pork loin. And we'll pop that in a tray and pop them in the oven. Okay, so we're about 15 minutes in now, and we'll just have a little look, see how the crackling is going. As you can hear and see, it's looking pretty good. We can just see how it's blistering up along those score marks. We're still sitting on 250 degrees, and we've got the fan force going. So we'll just turn it back a little bit, back to about 190 degrees, and let it go for probably another hour or so. And we'll have a look then. So our pork loin's been in there for about 2 hours now. We'll just go and check to see what temperature we've got and see if it's ready to come out. Beautiful colour. Creeping up. And that's spot on. Sitting just on about 70 degrees. So here we are, we'll give it a carve, see how it comes up. Sounding pretty good. That's a good sound. So the knife I'm using for this, we're actually using a fairly serrated edge with that hard crackle. It's a good way of getting through it. It smells fantastic. Chef's choice. Beautiful. One nice seasoned loin of pork, prunes and calvados. Merry Christmas. Too easy.